Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So during COVID, I really checked in quite a few times with Alex Vezina, the CEO of Prepared Canada, an emergency preparedness company. And I've missing him. And so I checked in with him, and he's written like 4 articles of late, all on really interesting topics. So I thought we'd have to check in and find out what's going on in emergency preparedness. And we've got a couple of topics to talk about tonight. One is fires, forest fires. It's clearly been an issue, as we all found out this weekend when we walked outside and saw the smog and the ash in the air. We may also talk about safe injection sites, which one of the mayoralty candidates is making a big issue in Toronto today. We may also talk a little bit about plastic and then see if we can round out with any other issues that Alex has written about. So, Alex, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a while.
It has. So you want to talk about forest fires and how you fight fire with fire, literally. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's a big topic. I think one of the best starting points when you're talking about fire and prevention, really, is a concept called the fire triangle. And the fire triangle has been around for a long time. It's something that people can Google quite quickly. It's it's good imagery. It's easy to digest. And really the main thing with looking at fires and wildfires in particular is we're only looking really at one part of the fire triangle, and we're focusing on response, and we're not looking at a different part and focusing on a different type of prevention that we could be doing more of. So I'll start with the fire triangle to give a giant basic overview of the concept. And this is interwoven through all of fire prevention for 100 years. So this is standard stuff. The idea behind a fire triangle is you have a triangle, and there's 3 parts of the triangle, and one part is fuel. You need fuel for a fire to burn, oxygen, and heat. And if you get rid of any of the 3 things, the fire is put out. Or if you don't have one of the 3 things, you can't start a fire. It's basically the rules of combustion and the rules of prevention, or the rules of getting rid of a fire. You have a fire triangle, 3 parts. There's also the fire tetrahedron, which is like a 4-part thing, with the center being the chemical reaction. Getting rid of the chemical reaction is a bit complicated. I don't really want to get into that. But basically, you got heat, you got fuel, and you got oxygen. Get rid of one of the 3, you don't have a fire. What we're focusing on right now with things like water bombers and with a lot of the firefighting efforts is effectively a response-based measure that focuses on getting rid of the oxygen. So we're trying to smother the fire. The problem is, with a lot of these wildfires that we have, some of them burn in the rain. And the reality is that when
they burn in the rain. How do they burn in the rain?
They're so large. They're so large that they can't be smothered by the rain. And the reality is that our water bomber is not producing more water on the forest than the rain is. So at some point, the fires get so large, there's nothing you can do. You have to basically let them burn out or try to control certain areas as best you can. But some wildfires get so large, you just have to wait for them to exhaust.
I understand
themselves.
That one of the problems as well is that the roots burn for quite a long time.
That's part of it, and that comes down to the fuel part, which is the part that I'm more focused on. And this is the part of fighting fire with fire, literally, the whole idea behind this. One thing that in Canada and the US, both, North America doesn't really do this very much, even though we have a lot of expertise in it, which is kind of weird, is we don't do controlled burns. And what a controlled burn is what you basically do is find the dry, dead plants, and you pre-burn them. That way, when the fire gets there, there's no fuel, and it stops. Because if you run out of fuel, the fire can't continue. There's nothing for it to burn. It's similar to what's the best way to make it so your gas tank doesn't catch on fire? Make sure it's empty. There's no fuel. It's not catching on fire. That's kind of the idea. So another part of this is fire is actually part of regular ecology. It's part of what normally happens in a healthy forest. When stuff gets really old, when plants get really old, lightning strikes, and that area catches on fire and it burns away, and it actually refertilizes the soil so that things can grow there again. So fire has been part of a natural forest ecosystem forever. We're just, with all the water bombing and firefighting we're doing, which is important because we don't want our cities to burn down, we're running to the problem where we're putting out a fire so it can start again because it's not done burning the fuel, and we're not dealing with the fuel problem. Like if you put a bunch of water on a dead plant, the plant is still dead. It's still going to be dry, and it's still going to catch on fire again. So that's kind of summary, the rough thing of the problem. And some of the kind of solutions we can go into, and how we can best do controlled burns and look at our forest management is a very interesting topic that we can expand on for quite a bit.
So how do you do a controlled burn?
Okay, so it depends on the area, but basically you get a bunch of professionals together that know how to survey an area, and they get on, there's a bunch of ways to do it, but generally you get on walkie-talkies and you set fire to something, and you make sure if it gets too far too fast, you put it out. And you set something on fire and you control the way the fire works. Now, not just anybody can do this, because if you just set something on fire and you don't have a way of controlling the burn, hence controlled burn, it can get out of control and you can get a wildfire. And actually, some wildfires are inadvertently caused by controlled burns gone awry. So it's good. It's important to get this right. It's fairly straightforward, and it gets more complex in practice with having to know how the land is. Like, you have to know the land. This is why First Nation involvement is actually so important with this. Getting communities involved that live in the area that have experience with it. Quite a few First Nations have had experience with controlled burns for over 100 years. And North American governments don't tend to engage with them very well on this, which is kind of odd to me. They have the expertise. It's a bit of a head scratcher, to be honest. Yep. It's not that they should replace our fire service, but they can definitely augment it, right? Like it's I don't know. It just seems odd. But the point is, you get together professionals that know what they're doing and they light it on fire. And generally speaking, large trees don't burn unless there's an exceptional amount of fire and or the tree is dead. Have you ever heard the saying, a tree grows for 200 years, lives for 200 years, and dies for 200 years?
No.
Okay, well, that's an old forestry thing. If you have
why does it take 200 years to die?
Well, because it basically it's drying out and slowly dying.
And so
it doesn't just die.
So burning it's a faster way,
basically, or cutting it down. Like, what you generally do when wood gets that old is you actually want to cut the tree out and you want to burn the underbrush. So like pulp and paper can benefit from this because you cut down all the old trees. It's actually better for the forest if you cut the tree down. So you don't have to burn the tree, you can use it for goods. But yeah, it's actually kind of it's a bit I don't know if ironic is the right word. It's a bit of a weird thing. There have been cases, I have to find the specific case, but where some environmental activists have like chained themselves to trees that were dying, where it was better for the forest if they actually cut it. Which is so interesting to me.
That is actually, it's
like,
very ironic.
It's like you chained yourself to the wrong tree. Like is in effect what happened. So it's forest ecology is very interesting.
Okay, so controlled burns is one of the solutions. You also in your article said that 85% of forest fires are caused by humans, by accident.
It was 80 plus. I forget it was 80 or 85. It was 80 something. So the original cause, the initial spark, essentially, is caused mostly by humans because we are in forests a lot and we tend to be fairly hazardous creatures. Predominantly, it's three things, which are campfires that are not controlled properly, cigarette butts, and arson. That's basically what it is. However, if we weren't there and the fuel was still there, the forest would still eventually catch fire from a lightning strike. Which is kind of the point of all of this. Like, if you don't have the fuel... if
humans do something stupid, all they're doing is accelerating what's going to happen anyway. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Because if there's no fuel, there's no fire. If there's what the humans are effectively doing is doing an uncontrolled burn for an area and pre-burning it, but it's so big of an area that it causes pollution issues and other mass destruction when it gets to a residential area. You're still burning the fuel away, so it's still extreme long-term is better for the forest. Well, probably not in the arson case, but otherwise is okay for forest ecology, but it's not controlled, so we have the huge pollution problems. Right? Does this kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, and there's no question that people are complaining about air quality and what's happening to accelerate climate change with all these forest fires. And what about that? So you talk about part of this triangle being heat. Yes. Is climate change actually making forest fires more prevalent and more catastrophic?
Okay, so there's a few different fields that I am an expert or a professional within, and because they call it kind of intermingle: disaster risk reduction, emergency preparedness, continuity of operations. All these professions tend to interweave a lot. Those industries, especially disaster risk reduction, categorically agree with climatologists with virtually every conclusion they've come to with climate change. So I just want to like get my bias out here front and center, not political bias, but professional bias. The bias of my industry is that climate change bad, and virtually every major disaster that we're having that is under the natural disaster category is being made worse, exacerbated in some way by climate change, period, full stop. Every single one.
Tornadoes, thunderstorms, floods.
Yes. Every single one. Every single one. Because
are being made worse by climate change.
Yes, because when you understand the way essentially air currents work and what happens with sea level rise, yes. And you have to explain every single one out, but yes. This is a scientific explanation that takes quite a bit of time.
Okay,
but I'm just saying that's the bias of the
forest fires this past year have been the worst that I've ever known.
And they'll be worse later. Yeah.
Really? So it'll only get worse.
Well, unless we reverse climate change. I'm declaring the bias of my industry. So just so you know where I'm coming from here. Because when I read the article,
proposal in the paper today that we should spend tons of money getting a fleet of water bombers. You're saying waste of money because we should just let it burn anyway.
Yes and no. Canada does have a problem where we have I think in Ontario and a few other provinces, we have massively reduced the funding of our firefighting services, especially for wildfires. And it is important that we're able to control a fire when it gets closer to a population center, because we can't have our cities burning. It's not like you throw response out the window so you can fund prevention entirely, because you still need to be able to respond at all. And our ability to respond is not very good right now. So we still need to respond. However, if we're prioritizing this over the underlying issue, I would say we need to focus more on the underlying issue. It's a problem where we have both problems. And
so bottom line, what you're saying is with this with the fire triangle, that we're not going to be able to reduce the heat because climate change is making everything warmer and it's worse than it ever was. And that by trying to get rid of the fuel with water and smother the oxygen, to get rid of the oxygen by smothering it with water, we can't do it fast enough. The rain doesn't even put out the fires.
You're delaying the inevitable.
So therefore the only solution is to get rid of the fuel. And you get rid of the fuel by controlled burn or by logging.
Well, you can't log the underbrush. So you need control burns. But it's slightly different. I wouldn't say that we shouldn't be doing the water bombing. It's that we have been ignoring the prevention side, the fuel side, for so long. It is categorically important we focus on that. And it's not that we do this or that, because we do need both, but it's been ignored for way too long. And we have the expertise to do it.
Interesting. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back. And we're going to talk about next issue, safe injection sites. Stay with us, everybody. Interesting. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My chat tonight is with Alex Vezina. He is CEO of Prepared Canada, an emergency preparedness company. He was very helpful to me in understanding all the issues in regards to COVID-19 a couple of years ago. Seems like it's over. I guess it is. Not. I just know two people that got COVID this weekend, actually, but that's beside the point. We just talked about forest fires. I want to turn now, Alex, if we could, to an article you wrote on safe injection sites. Both one of the candidates for mayor of Toronto, as well as one of our national candidates for prime minister, are both making a big issue of against safe injection sites. Where do you come out? Are safe injection sites good or are they bad?
So this is another piece that I did that was really, in addition to being a piece on safe injection sites, is really about a piece of understanding when someone is making an argument where they don't have the evidence to support their claim. The reality is most of the arguments around safe injection sites are just wrong. They don't have evidence. They don't have sufficient evidence to make the claim. Like making the claim that the safe injection site categorically destroys my neighborhood, you can't really make that claim on like a city level. You could make the argument that like usually when someone makes that argument, they're making the argument that the crime rate has increased in the total city because the safe injection site has been introduced. But you can't really prove that. You might be able to prove that the crime has been moved, but not that the total rate has necessarily increased. There's a huge issues with proving crime rates in general because of how many variables there are in the data, but that's one thing. On the other side, there are arguments that safe injection sites have effectively on their own reduced drug use. There's no evidence of that. There's no evidence that they've increased drug use either.
No evidence that they've reduced or increased drug use.
Not on their own. There's evidence that social services done in conjunction with them, that has done it, but not the safe injection sites on their own. People are making a whole bunch of, they're throwing all of the arguments to deal with public health and drug prevention and drug use at safe injection sites. And they're taking a whole bunch of things that are different processes that are not the safe injection sites, and they're throwing it at the safe injection site. A safe injection site is a place you can go to use a substance where in the event of an overdose, there is a medical professional there to help you not die. That is what it is. That is what it does. It's not a rehab center. It's not a place that gives you a whole bunch of, it's not counseling. It's not jail. It's a place where you can safely not die, which is evidenced.
It's a place where you can safely not die.
Basically.
That's good, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but which is evidenced by the record of the main one in British Columbia, which, to my knowledge, to date has had 0 overdoses, which is pretty good. But the other thing is we don't have enough safe injection sites for the N value in the statistic to be big enough to draw virtually any conclusion about a particular region.
Why do people get so upset about these safe injection sites?
Because look, here's the thing. North America and Canada extended of that doesn't know what it wants to do about drug users. It doesn't know what it wants to do. It doesn't know if it wants to be compassionate. It doesn't know if it wants to throw them in jail. It doesn't know what it wants to do. So,
but you say in your article that drug overdoses are one of the most leading causes of death in Canada.
They are, but what do you do about it? Do you
have safe injection sites so people don't die?
Sure, but what do you do about getting the person not addicted to drugs in the first place, or making it so that they can get off them once they're addicted? Right? What is the answer to that question? And the answer is
have rehab.
Well, maybe, but there's 15 different answers and they're all political. And most of them don't have exact evidence, because if we knew the exact answer, we'd be doing it already. So this gets very political very fast. And usually this gets into the do we or do we not do the Portugal argument debate, because of what Portugal did involving its decriminalization of all drugs for simple possession and use, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. But what people don't talk about when they bring up Portugal is the whole back end, because Portugal built an entire social services system so that if someone was found to be using previously like illicit substances, there was some support network. But that is incredibly expensive, and North America has not done that.
You make the argument in your article that we don't have enough rehab, that the waiting lines are way too long.
It's not rehab; it's our entire mental health network. It's not just rehab. Like, you can't, if you have anything in the mental health category and you need a therapist, if you're lucky, you can get on a 6-month waiting list. Like, you can't get services in this country most of the time if you have anything in the mental health umbrella. Like, there's also physical health. Like, we can get into Canadian healthcare, and we've done it before. But we do not, like, I have so many. I shouldn't be using anecdotes, but virtually every person that I know who has tried to seek mental health services either cannot get services for more than 2 years, or has been waiting more than 6 months to find one person that ends up not being the right person for them. Good luck. And that's for, like, counseling. That's not for live-in therapy. Like, we just don't have the services.
We argue like crazy against safe injection sites when what you're saying is they actually do reduce death. But what we really need is to invest a huge amount of time, effort, and money in dealing with the people that are going to the safe injection sites that want to have counseling and want to go into rehab or have mental health issues?
It's like arguing against the emergency room because you're not funding safe cycling.
Well, I got to tell you, every single time I've gone to Whistler, the hospital emergency room has been packed with people that didn't ski safe.
I get it, but do you close down the emergency room to get more ski rehab centers?
Well, maybe if we close down the emergency room in Whistler, people would be a little bit more careful because they realize they're going to have to get ambulanced all the way to Vancouver before they get their broken whatever dealt with.
And a bunch of people would bleed to death.
I'm being sarcastic.
No, but you know what I mean. No, but they might not necessarily.
But that is a good analogy. So what you're saying is the safe injection site is like an emergency room.
It's a stopgap response measure that's accelerated there. That's the point of a safe injection site is so you don't have to wait for the ambulance to arrive. They're there. You're not in an ER, but in effect.
Well, and also you're using a clean needle versus a
so there are prevention benefits too. But look, the point is we're not debate, like no one that I've seen in the health field is making the claim that safe injection sites are going to increase or decrease drug use. They're just making the claim it'd be nice if they didn't die. Like that's
the opponents,
it's that simple.
Okay, and I agree with that. The opponents argue that they normalize drug behavior, that they make getting high and getting close to an overdose more normal.
I can get that argument, but I haven't seen the data to support it. That's the problem. I haven't seen the data that to support that other than let's say you make that argument. You have to then justify that all of the other variables do not exist or are not a greater variable. So like, for example, would that person not otherwise do the drug anyways? Is the simple response. So you have to prove that that is the variable that is actually making people do drugs. And they haven't done that. They've just said it. And you can say that there are unicorns, but you have to prove that there are unicorns.
Okay, one of the candidates for mayor in Toronto was taking pictures of needles on subway platforms and steps and things like this.
Yes, but you have to prove that that's because of safe injection sites.
He's saying that the safe injection sites normalize drug use, and that it's like decriminalizing marijuana. That all of a sudden, a whole bunch of people that wouldn't have smoked marijuana before smoke it because, well, it's legal now. I can buy it at the corner store.
Except there were statistics in some areas that legalized marijuana that showed that use went down
because it was no longer illegal.
It's no longer cool. It's no longer rebellious, right?
My grandfather, my grandfather smoked up. Why would I smoke up?
Yeah. So anyone can make a claim, but you have to have evidence. Like, once again, it's like the article I wrote about unfounded claims and people just drawing conclusions. If you make this claim or you ask me to prove a negative, then you are a chair. Prove to me you're not a chair. Like it's ridiculous. You have to provide evidence for what you're saying. But because I found a needle is not evidence.
You have a safe injection site. Aren't you bringing all of the drug use, all of the crime into one spot?
You could be, but that could also be a benefit because that means it's easier to police because they're not distributed. You know where the crime is. Install some cameras and police the area more. Congratulations. It's now easier to police. They're not distributed. They're not somewhere. You know where they are. Like, think about it this way. If you have a problem with public urination around the safe injection site, maybe it's your enforcement for public urination and it's not the safe injection site. Would they not?
You don't have a urinal or a washroom, or a clean one or a unlocked one.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So instead of having to build public urinals everywhere, you build 3 more next to the safe injection site. Congratulations, you've saved money. Like when you concentrate something in an area, it becomes more efficient to deal with it in that area. If we choose to not deal with it, that's our problem. That doesn't mean that it's going to go away. Like, do we really think that suddenly people started urinating on the street out of nowhere, or were they just doing it somewhere else before and they've moved? Like, if you're going to make the claim that crime is increasing, you have to prove that it hasn't just been moved, that it's actually increased. That's the problem with these claims. And by the way, we've been kind of ripping on the people who are against, but I ripped apart the people who are for too, because they make all sorts of claims saying that this is the cure to everything, which it's not. It just makes it so you don't die, which is good. because I like, look, my industry is in the industry of, it's nice if people don't die. So I like that. But but you don't say it's the cure for everything. Like, come on. It's like saying the emergency room is going to cure your cancer. It's not. It's going to keep you alive for 15 minutes.
So bottom line, safe injection sites, at least, they keep people alive. You don't die there.
Yeah, that's what we know. It's nice. Look, once again, the one in the main one that is referenced in British Columbia, 0 overdoses to date for the people that used it. It's nice if people don't die.
And based on statistics, could you come to the conclusion that some of those people would have used anyway and would have died?
Yes, because a result of 0 deaths is, with how many people go through there, is astounding.
And so have deaths from drug use declined in BC or in Vancouver?
Deaths from drug use among the population that use safe injection sites has decreased to 0.
Okay, but what about drug use and using injection?
Here's the problem. It depends. Because if you're in an area in British Columbia that doesn't have a safe injection site, where drug use total has increased and the number of overdoses has increased because the total number has increased, then it may have gone up. It may have gone down. You don't know. But if safe injection sites are not tied to drug use rates, then the population, then it's irrelevant to the asking questions about the population that doesn't use them, because that doesn't affect them. It's like asking me, do safe injection sites lower overdose rates for people that don't use them? I don't know. They don't use them. Does a safe injection?
I understand. I think the other thing that's interesting about this comment about it normalizes drug use is, if that's what you believe and you want to not normalize, you want to make it abnormal to use drugs, then you've got to accept that you got to have some people that die.
No, but here's another thing. But yes, but here's another thing. Doesn't normalize drug use for the people that don't use it, because that doesn't make any sense.
No, if I see a safe injection site and people are shooting up and are going there on a regular basis, I think that the general attitude toward drug use in the community has gotten more lax, more accepting. Just like I think that, general attitudes toward marijuana use are more accepting when it's decriminalized or it's legalized, or there's stores that are selling cannabis at every single stupid strip mall that exists.
So I disagree. And also, strip malls are not stupid. But I disagree. And the main reason why is these safe injection sites in many cases have come before decriminalization, where the only place where it is not criminal and you cannot enforce use is use in the safe injection site. So it doesn't make logical sense for someone to go into an area where it is effectively still criminal to consume, instead of going into the safe injection site where it is in effect not criminal because the police cannot enforce. They've created zones of it is legally acceptable to use with these. So we can talk about the other part, but I would argue that if we've decriminalized the substance, that is far more significant than the existence of a safe injection site to the argument.
Okay. What are we going to talk about next? Plastic?
Yeah, we can do plastic. Plastic's fun.
Fantastic. We're going to take a break for some messages and be back in 2 minutes with Alex Vezina, CEO of Prepared Canada, emergency preparedness company. We're going to talk a little bit about another article he's written on plastics. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We got another controversial topic from Alex Vezina, the CEO of Prepared Canada, an emergency preparedness expert on plastic. And he's written an article on climate change. Plastic is often better than paper. And what is properly described as biodegradable is often not biodegradable once it's mixed into a landfill. Tell us what your thesis on this one is, Alex Vezina.
Okay, so the main point of this article was really to give people an intro to the concept of life cycle analysis, or like cradle to grave analysis, womb to tomb analysis. The idea that the full cost of something, be it in environmental damage or financial cost or energy or whatever it is not what the end user uses, but is the total from getting the raw materials to disposal. And one of the things that is easier for a lot of people to understand, I found with this, is looking at something like paper and plastic, because I assume most of us remember the idea that we have to ban all plastic straws. And we don't like the paper straws because they get soggy and they don't taste good and they're annoying. So I find that this type of topic is a good intro that resonates with people.
So are you saying we should go back to plastic straws?
Actually, in this instance, there's a significant argument for it. Specifically, it's a little interesting case. So when you look at the justification for going away from plastic straws, and actually grocery bags too, when you look at the justification for this, almost all of the justification is on landfill and waste, but they didn't look at carbon emissions in the rest of the process. They didn't look at carbon emissions for transportation. The essentially paper is heavier than plastic in the truck. You need more trucks to transport the paper than the plastic, simply because of weight and how much you can stack. They didn't look at the actual refinement process and what goes into refining and making plastic versus making paper. They just looked really at end user disposal. And, we're going to kill the fish. I'm being flippant here, but you get the point.
But your article said that conservative estimates put plastic straws at almost a third of the energy cost and carbon dioxide emissions of paper.
They do. And that's, once again, a conservative estimate. Some of the more not conservative ones was 5 times plus. So when you look at the emissions and that's, by the way, that's not including the carbon emissions, the net emissions from cutting down the tree. So I didn't include the carbon capture value of the tree in that. When you include that, it gets even more ridiculous. So because the tree takes carbon out of the atmosphere and breathes it, right? So paper refinement is actually way more energy inefficient. It produces way more carbon and uses more water, which is also relevant, than plastic. So that's one thing. Simply on the production of it. When you add in transportation, it gets even more ridiculous. So really, the only argument you get in the life cycle, because paper loses everywhere, is disposal. And the argument for it ends up being you can recycle paper. Paper is biodegradable. That's the only argument you get. And look, plastic doesn't degrade very well, and our recycling sucks in North America. Okay, our recycling sucks in general. In many jurisdictions in North America, when you put something in a recycling bin, it goes straight into the landfill. It's in practice effectively cosmetic to make people feel good. And a lot of jurisdictions, for example, significant parts of Quebec, have given up on recycling almost entirely.
Why?
Because there's a few reasons, but one big reason is getting the entire population to separate out their recycling perfectly, so people don't have to manually sift through material to make sure that this box is full of exactly this material, is not practical. Because when you're recycling plastic, you need to make sure that everything in that bin is plastic. When you're recycling paper, everything in that bin has to be paper. Once you put a different type of material in there, when they try to put it into a process to essentially get that material again out of it, you've created a hybrid material with a chemical reaction, and it becomes useless garbage.
So we should separate and have two green bins, one for plastic and another for paper and cardboard.
And another for aluminum, and another, and another, and another, and another, and another. But the thing is, not every plastic is the same, and not every paper is the same. It gets very complicated. And expecting the entire population to do that becomes essentially impossible in practice.
Okay.
So,
Hold it here. You make the argument in your article that a cotton bag has to be used
organic
7,100 times to equal the much smaller environmental impact of a plastic bag.
Yes.
And an organic cotton bag has to be used 20,000 times.
Yes. So
this makes no sense. So you're saying that we are converting from plastic bags at each one of our grocery stores to these cotton bags that have to be used 7,000 times to have the same environmental impact?
Cotton bags, if you use them every day.
Organic is 20,000.
No, but let me just so you know, because this is the ridiculous number, and I was baffled when I found this. The organic cotton bag, because it's the extreme example, if you use it every single day, has to be reused for more than 50 years before it starts being better than a single-use plastic. because of how light plastic is, how easy it is to transport, and how inefficient it is to grow cotton, extract cotton, and then refine it in the entire process. Cotton is extremely bad for the environment. And organic cotton, because the yield is lower, is even worse. Organic products in general are worse for the environment than non-organic, simply because the yield is lower per carbon that's required and energy that's required.
So why are we switching to all these bags rather than
because
the plastic bags?
It looks good for recycling, and recycling is public facing, and we don't do life cycle analysis. That's actually the reason we don't do life
Sounds
cycle.
Like we're all dumb, or the politicians are lying to us, or something.
I don't like going down the politicians are lying to us argument, because one, it's hard to prove, and two, it gets pretty conspiratorial pretty fast. So I don't like going there. As for we're all dumb, the life cycle analysis isn't exactly simple. So I think a certain amount of forgiveness should be given there, because saying, hey, I need you to look at the entire process of something along the entire way, when at every single chain in the process, it's a different company. I get it. It's not simple. However, I think it is reasonable to expect an agency like Environment Canada to be doing life cycle analysis. I think that certain agencies, given their size and their scope, should be able to contract out universities, for example, and do this. We've been able to do it in other industries, especially in energy. Especially in energy. This is something that we should be doing, and we're apparently not. So within that context, the specific people that should be doing it, you could maybe make a stupid argument, as in an argument of stupidity. But I don't think this is intentional maliciousness towards the public. I think you can make an argument for recycling is sexy and it's politically expedient, probably. But I wouldn't go for, they're trying to get one over on us. The government's bad. I'm not big on that sort of argument, regardless of who's in government. I don't like that. I mean, we're in Canada. It's not the same. This isn't North Korea.
You also make the argument that a lot of what we think is biodegradable really isn't.
Yeah, so this is interesting. So I when I was doing the dive on this, I actually found out that paper is not always biodegradable. So one, it's and plastic in general is not biodegradable most of the time, but certain types of paper are actually not biodegradable because of how they're manufactured. Certain chemicals are put in them in certain types where they really can't break down. That's the first thing, and the second thing is when paper gets put in the landfill. In some situations, because of the sorry for the grossness, but the juices it mixes with people's garbage, chemical reactions occur that make it so the paper does not break down normally. So it can in effect become biodegradable, non-biodegradable, when it mixes in the landfill, which I thought was really interesting, because my initial assumption was that biodegradable is as biodegradable does. If it's biodegradable, it's biodegradable. But no, that makes sense. When chemical reactions happen with things, you can get something that becomes this kind of slurry of I'm not breaking down.
So we should go back and not use paper straws, but go back to plastic straws, and we should go back to plastic bags. What about these clamshell containers that McDonald's hamburgers used to be in, rather than these plastic clamshell containers, rather than paper?
Look, I am more than okay with the argument, frankly, of if you can do without the bag entirely, that's a reasonable argument. I'm also for, if we've already manufactured the thing, it's not, you don't throw out the cotton bag. We've already spent the carbon. If you already have it, use it. But in general, yes, if we're not going to solve the landfill problem, there's no point. We might as well just you unfortunately have to make the decision or the debate between do I save the fish or save the planet cooking? And given that our strategy in Canada is based around carbon tax, carbon capture, controlling carbon emissions, I think we care more about the carbon in the air than we care about the fish. And if that is true, it would make logical sense to go back to plastic, is essentially my argument. If that's not the case, then fair enough, right? But if that's our focus, if we care about carbon emissions and CO2 equivalent, then we should be doing the things that result in less CO2 being emitted. Yeah.
So we're going to have controlled burns. We're going to have safe injection sites, and we're going to go back to plastic.
Well, we better be doing control burns. I mean, like, we really better be doing that. I think the whole public health industry agrees on safe injection sites. And I don't know if we're going back to plastic, but on certain things, we probably should.
And we got one more issue to talk about tonight with Alex Vezina, and that's the real risks of artificial intelligence. Stay with us. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Alex Vezina, the CEO of Prepared Canada, is my guest tonight. We've been having an interesting survey of a bunch of different issues. First of all, he's told me that forest fires are going to increase because of climate change, and that there's this fire triangle. We can't do much to get rid of the oxygen because lots of fires even continue in the rain. And so we almost can't smother it with enough water bombers, and that the heat is only going to get worse with climate change. And so therefore the only answer is to get rid of the fuel through controlled burns. And then on safe injection sites, he says the only thing safe injection sites do is save people from dying. They don't necessarily increase crime. They don't make drug use normal, but they also don't solve things and rehabilitate people. And we need to have mental health rehab and other solutions if we actually want to solve drug addiction and drug problems. And then we just finished an interesting conversation about plastics versus paper. And he's arguing for plastics, which is interesting, and says that the life cycle costs of a lot of paper are greater. 7,100 times you have to use a cotton bag to make it equivalent to the cost of a plastic bag. Incredible. And now you want to tell me about the real risks of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, so AI is a fun one. Well, they're all interesting scientifically. Like, look, with one hat that I wear, I'm an academic, right? So I enjoy looking into this stuff. This is interesting for me. I've noticed that the focus on risk around AI has been the Terminator is coming, we're all going to die, get ready for Skynet. And that is really, really not the case. And I don't like what has been done here by, frankly, a lot of the tech giants with marketing, where they've made AI sound a lot more interesting than it actually is, and they made it scary. Have you heard of how AI can hallucinate? Have you heard of the hallucinations?
Yes.
Do you know what the hallucinations are? When you ask the AI for a picture of a taco and it gives you a song from Mariah Carey, that's a hallucination. A hallucination is when the AI just doesn't know what it's doing. It's not that interesting, really. What AIs effectively are, the ones that we're talking about, ChatGPT, OpenAI, etc., are they're more sophisticated search engines. That's really what they're doing. They're scraping the internet to try to find out how to compile a complex search result, and then they give you the search result. They can't really do anything on their own. They're entirely dependent on a query. They're far less dangerous than people realize, but they're being made out to be this monster that is going to kill us all because it means that tech has advanced in great areas, and I would argue it makes their stock price look nice. So it's kind of baffling to me. Like, when you really look into the tech of this, it's a really good search engine. That's all it is. Yes, it can create an entire 10,000 word essay for you in under 30 seconds. But it has done that by doing an extremely complex search query, scraping the internet on how to compile those things. And in that essay, you're going to find a whole bunch of stuff that's straight up copy paste lifted, and a whole bunch of stuff that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The hallucination artifact thing that I was talking about before. They're essentially search engines. And you'll see quite a few tech experts will say exactly what I'm saying, but they're not the ones who have their share price tied to this particular project succeeding. Like, it's scaring the feces out of people, I think, is irresponsible. And we're just not there. Okay, this is not.
You tried to scare people in your article by talking about whether ChatGPT could eradicate humanity.
No, someone tried to give a command to a version of ChatGPT telling it to eradicate humanity, and it decided to create a Twitter profile and recruit followers saying, I would like to eradicate humanity. Can you help me, please? That they did that. That was Doomsday GPT or Doomsday AI, whatever it was called. They did that, and it was laughable. It's like, I need the nuclear codes. Please tell me them. Okay, like, come on. Like, and when you look at things like trying to, for example, launch all the nukes and the world's going to end, most of those systems are analog. You can't connect to them from the internet. In order for an AI to be able to eradicate humanity, humanity would already have to know how to do it, would have to know how to enter the query command, and the AI would just do it faster. So unless we've solved out how to do that, the AI can't do it. And if the AI requires internet and power, if it requires internet and power to do it, and the solution is analog outside of that, it can't do it. If you unplug it, the AI shuts down. Okay, like this thing is not an independent sentient being. We are so far from sentience; it is ridiculous.
Okay, but
in terms of this technology,
you do think there's a threat of job loss?
Oh, definitely. Oh, no question. Because the reality is that it is very, very easy to get 10,000 word plus pieces of work. If you want to create a 600 word article for Sun Post Media, like the ones that I make, you could put in a query and have it pump out 50 of them in 4 minutes. And then you can instead go through them and edit. So you don't have to write them by hand. What does that do to writers? You don't need writers. You need editors who know how to edit AI work. So anyone who has a job where they're creating text, you need less people that know how to edit text, not that need to know how to do it originally. So yeah, there's threat of job loss, but what I'm hearing is threat of death of the species. And it's like, come on, stop it. Like, stop. There's nothing to indicate that at all. Now, look, there is also threat and risk of deepfake issues because the AIs are getting very, very, very good at doing what took us a long time, which is creating artificial images and artificial video. Because what an AI essentially does is whatever we want to do, but faster. So if you want to create an image of yourself on Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's body with your skin tone and everything, and you're now starring in Moana live action, you can do that now. And in about 5 years, it will be indistinguishable from reality. So the effect of this on having to verify video in court cases, in propaganda, in things like that, that is a serious issue. But that's a human being telling an AI to make something to mess with another human being. That's not the AI becoming sentient and the Terminator killing us all. It's like you need the human to fire the gun. The gun isn't growing legs. Okay.
Okay, but the second issue that you say is a risk is weaponization. You say that that AI is not going to replace humans, but it's going to be helpful in helping humans who want to harm other humans.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just saying. That's the point. The AI is you can make it do whatever you would want to do, but faster. But it's not going to prompt itself. You have to pick up the gun and fire it. You have to type the command in the keyboard. And when the AI comes back with some ridiculous thing that isn't what you want, you have to sit there and fidget with it and play with it for 3 hours until it does what you want to do. And when you finally have the perfect video of Brian doing something that he should never be doing, that he never actually did, but you have proof now, after you've sat with the AI for 4 hours, then you have it. But you still have to sit there and make it. Right? It's not going to do it on its own. Think about the issues with I guess the summary of the categories like fake news on social media. The implications that AI has for fake news on social media is massive. One of the candidates,
lots more fake news.
Well, I mean, it's going to be indistinguishable from real news, and you can just make people out of nowhere. You can make media that looks real for anything. You can create something out of nothing effectively in terms of information. You could create a city that is on fire and burning, but if you walk outside, that's your house, but it's not on fire. And no one will know that there's the difference, because that's what you can do with AI. When you apply it to like deepfake technology or creating interesting graphics. Have you not seen movies that look like reality?
Yes.
So what are we going to like in 5 years? Come on. Like, have you not seen a deepfake before? Have you seen the things where
so you're not worried that it's going to take over the world. You're not worried that it's going to annihilate the world, but you are worried that it's going to increase job loss for some sectors, and you're worried that it's going to lead to a lot of fake information. that it's going to be very difficult to distinguish between real articles, real videos, real something or others, and AI created versions of it. So what's the answer? Don't worry about it, or all these industry guys that are arguing for regulation should be listened to?
I think the regulation for AI is probably a smart move, depending on how quickly you want it to get out of control. I think we have a serious risk of not being able to distinguish between real and not real information in the very near future. But once again, it's people that are behind all these problems. It's not the AI that's behind the problem. So you're regulating people and using the AI. You might have to regulate the technology getting out of control. But just for an example, for how far this has already gotten, you can go on a streaming service like YouTube, etc., and you can look up 24/7 debates that are going on between Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Justin Trudeau, any movie star, and the AI will create the person, put them on a podium, and it will use their voice to make arguments that will sound like something that person would probably say. And every now and then it'll do something weird. But if that's where we're at right now, in 5 years, it'll be perfect. And you will not be able to tell the difference unless you're an expert. And that should scare people in the political realm. But if you're someone where your job isn't affected by AI and you don't pay attention to politics anyways, meh. Like, really, like if it's not going to really affect you, then it's not really going to affect you because you weren't paying attention to it anyways. And if it does, you're not going to notice.
Fascinating conversation tonight. So AI, we need to be less worried about annihilating the world, but it could really mess things up with reality versus fake, and with some job losses. On plastic versus paper, paper isn't as great as we thought, and plastics is not as bad as we thought.
In some cases,
injection sites.
In some cases,
okay.
Some cases.
In safe injection sites, all they do is help people. Stop people from dying,
which is good.
And which is very good, very good. And on fire, controlled burns are the answer.
We still need water bombers because small fires we can still put out, and your house burning is bad. But
you got to have some fire.
You got to have some fire, and you got to deal with the fuel.
Alex Vezina, CEO of Prepared Canada. Fascinating conversation. Thanks very much. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Anytime.
Well, that's our show for tonight, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I remind you, I'm on every night at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and video casts are available on my website, briancrombie.com. And I think I learned some stuff. Hopefully you did tonight from Alex Vezina. Good night, everybody. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks.